We recognize that CVUUS gathers on land seized from the Western Abenaki people by European colonizers. We respect the Abenaki's spiritual relationship to the land and waters of the Champlain Valley. We are committed to building a peaceful and more just relationship with them and to promoting knowledge about their history and culture. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Sunday morning service at the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society, led by our minister, Reverend Barnaby Feeder. My name is Abby Sessions. I'm a member of this congregation and a member of the worship team. This Sunday, we are delighted to welcome a new worship associate to our ranks. Donna Blazik will be having her, can we say, maiden voyage as worship associate this morning. Sorry if that's not PC. Whatever your beliefs, your origins, your way of being, you are welcome here. We are a strong and caring community committed to both nurturing our own spiritual well-being and to working together in the larger community to build a better, more peaceful, more compassionate, more beautiful world. If you are new to our community, we invite and encourage you to sign the guest book in the lobby or on the Zoom chat so that we might get to know you better. For those of you who are with us in the sanctuary, this would be a great time to turn off your cell phones. And please join us after worship for social hour in the fellowship hall downstairs. Now here's Barnaby with Pathways to Connection.
So in the old days, we were excited about all the things that we were doing, and we would look at the list that's in the order of service and just run through them for you verbally as if you weren't able to read. But we know you can read, so I'm only going to talk about two pathways to connection we really want to call your attention to. And one is that tomorrow at 5:30 in the fellowship hall, 5:30 to 7, is the last of the 3 classes for people who are new UUs. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean new to Unitarian Universalism. Some of them are experienced UUs who have moved here, and others are people who have just found us recently in the last year. It's a big group of people, and this is the class where they find out how we as a congregation run and what the history is of our congregation. And so I invite any of you who are longtime lay leaders, if you want to pop in and meet this new group and share what your involvement has been, this would be a really good time to do it. 5:30 to 7 tomorrow. It's a pathway, a real pathway to connection. Now, there's another pathway to connection, which is a little bit more spiritual. And that is a connection to our grounds and our land. And we have a landscaping team, which for years has faithfully maintained this landscape that we've planted and cared for. But a lot of them are getting to the age where that's physically quite difficult for them. And we need a new group of people to step up and figure out in consultation with the people who've been doing it all these years, what are ways that they can plug in. No one is asking you to step up and become the head gardener or anything like that. But there are lots of little ways we can get this done. And if we don't do it for ourselves, then we end up having to hire an outsider to do it. And we lose a little bit of our own connection with this beautiful space we occupy. So in the coffee hour, we're going to have Dinah's going to be there. Dinah, stand up and turn around so people can see you. And is Sue Rasmussen here? There, and Sue will be down there. And these are the pros. They know all about it. They can tell you about little ways that you can help. And we'll see how far we can get with ourselves before we go out and hire people to make up the difference, and then take that out of our budget, which we would rather use for other things. So those are the two pathways to connection I really wanted to call your attention to today. One occurring downstairs right after the service and the other occurring downstairs tomorrow. There's some wonderful other things to read about in your order of service, and you can find more information about them online, or you can ask me, and I'll direct you to whoever in the congregation is most plugged in with those. Thank you very much. And now our gathering song.
Right. And this gathering song is a round. So I invite you to sing in harmony. You don't have to just sing with me.
You can stand if you're able or willing, or
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Good morning. What you believe, bring with you as you come. If you have doubts, bring them with you also. Come as you are, and inescapably, you must come if you would be yourself. Of others, ask no more or less. Let us be what we are as best we can. No one is perfect. No one is better or worse than another, for no one has lived the life of others. All are seekers, no matter how much they have found. All are in need, no matter how much they resent it. All are proud, no matter how humble they wish they were. Let beliefs, doubt, shame, pride, humility, and the inescapability of self set side by side in mutual and self-respect until there comes the feeling that in depth of understanding and of feeling. Okay, so we're going to do the chalice lighting. May this flame kindle cherished memories, spark gratitude for the blessing of community, and wash us in the light of giving love.
So we are here to tell you about, any guess? The crop walk. Did the two of you want to maybe put those in front of the railing? And it's okay if they don't stay up. Don't sweat them. Whatever's easiest. Perfect. No, Katie, that's great. That's great. Thank you. So I am Poppy. I run the programs for kids, and I'm here to tell you about the annual crop walk. So we have been involved in the crop walk for many, many years. And before COVID, we had a very large group. And then during COVID, we had some people who did it at home. We had last year, I think they did it in person, and there was a very small group in general for the whole town who showed up, but some people still did. But now it's back full on in person walking. It's next Sunday. And I'm really hoping that people will come to walk with us and be part of the CVUUS walking group. There's groups that come from many of the local churches and congregations, and Havara also comes. So it's really nice to kind of come and represent. What else do I need to say? Oh, if you don't want to walk or you can't walk, you can also support us by giving me or Bobby Loney, who I don't think is here right now, but Jerry is. Jerry, can you just raise your hand? That is my dad also, in case you didn't know that. Cash or check to support the CVUUS team. We have a team. You can go online and donate. A few people already have, which I'm very grateful for. We're trying to raise $1,000, which we've successfully done many times, so I'm sure we will. And the walk is an easy walk. There's 2 loops. You start in town at 1 in the afternoon on the green. One loop kind of goes over here through Chipman Park. No, Buttoff Acres. Thank you. I always do that. And then back to the green. And then if you're super into walking, you can do the second loop, which goes up around the college and back. So we have some beautifully copied handouts, which my fantastic assistants, who were not paid anything to help, right? Yes, are going to come hand them out. So maybe I think we've done everybody. Thank you, handouters. It was also pointed out to me that I did not tell you what the walk is for. Besides being really fun and a nice thing to do as a group. It raises money to fight hunger and poverty. It's done by the Church World Service, which is an international group that fights hunger and poverty. And some of the money stays in Addison County. So I've probably forgotten more, but that's what I got. So kids, it's time for us to go. And this is the first time since COVID came that we are going to walk, that we're going to sing the kids out. So this is our tradition for those of you who are new today, which is a bunch of you. Kids often start in here, stay for a bit, stay through whatever my thing is, which often is a little more exciting than a crop walk promo. And then we sing, we're sung out over to the RE building. So I'm thrilled to be here doing that again. And I think today we're going to do this little light of mine. So any kids who are here, who are going to RE, why don't you come up front so we can leave from here and we'll go down the aisle. So give us just a second to get up. You won't have to see it from off. We're going to walk with you.
I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. shine, let it shine, let it shine. One more time. All right, maybe not.
So every month, we share our offering with a group that's doing work in the world that amplifies our values so that we know we're not doing it alone. And sometimes it's a significant amount if it's a small group that comes from us, and sometimes it's more of a vote of confidence. We are sharing our offering this month with CLC. You can read about it up there, the Campaign Legal Center. They are doing work to preserve democracy, work in the courts. So this is all different kinds of legal actions to stop efforts in various areas that are depriving people of the vote. And more recently, they've been working on supporting efforts to stop people from actually just stealing elections and changing votes through the courts. And it's all focused on this country, on preserving our democracy. There are other organizations that we've worked with in the past that work to bring democracy around the world. But this month, we're focusing on preserving our own. And we invite you to be as generous as you can in this last offering of the month for the CLC. Thank you. Milestones and passages this week. I have to start with a little intro.
We haven't sung yet.
Oh, we haven't sung yet. That's right. Come sing a song with me. When So I want to start the sharing of milestones and passages with a little story. So this is this wonderful little binder I got at a UU Ministers Association meeting. When you're professional, you go to these meetings and they often pass out things in a binder. I have a binder very much like it from the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly. And that binder is sitting at home with all of my preparations for today's service. This binder is here filled with the stories about great UU women that I shared with the history class for the new UUs last Monday. So I'm going to try to remember all of the milestones that I had typed out. And if you had a milestone and I forgot it, you just raise your hand and we'll make sure that we get it included in this milestones and passages portion of the service. Now, the first milestone I had chronologically, this I'm sure of, came from Rich and Artley Wilson, who were preparing to go out of town. And they wanted to share with you that they recently attended the memorial service in Burlington for Reverend Robert Sengus, who was the longtime leader of that congregation and a pioneer in UU Buddhism. And they said it was really meaningful to be up there because before CVUUS was created, and they were among the founders, they had been attending the Burlington Church, and Bob Sengus was their minister there. So they saw a lot of old friends and really enjoyed remembering this remarkable man who served a neighboring congregation for a really long time. And so I'm glad I got that in because although Rich and Artley aren't here today, they probably will go back and listen to this service and see that I remembered. I wanted to also share something that a bunch of you know if you've read my weekend greeting. This is a sadness for me, but really for my wife, Michelle. Kester, our cat, who had been with us for 17 years, we had to put him down this week when he simply couldn't function anymore. And this isn't just for me, this is for everybody who has had to go through that experience of letting a pet go. And I think that that's probably almost everybody in this room. This is something that no matter how diverse our backgrounds are, we end up in the course of our lives sharing this experience. So when I share how sad we are, especially Michelle, I think you all know. We have another bit of hard news I received recently. Stephen Fiddler, who most of you know, he's a member of the congregation who is legally blind and his life has a lot of challenges. The person that he's closest to in the world, his father, has gone into the hospital with a severe sepsis infection, and he asks that we all send our prayers to him and his father as they go through this very tough time. And I'll be seeing Stephen tomorrow, and I know I'll be able to convey to him that we had this moment and that these feelings are there for him. Kate Castor, I've told you a little bit about her going on hospice. She is really slowing down. We all know how tough Kate is. So I'm not saying that we'll be up here next week saying that she has passed, but it is just a matter of time. And if you want to send cards to her, you should do it soon. We can get you the address if you don't have it, to the nursing home in Virgins. And on a great happy note to close, we had a wonderful wedding here yesterday. Esther Charleston and Jesse Norwood. Francois presided beautifully and sang as well as presiding. And this congregation just did so much for them. Chris Murphy did beautiful flower arrangements. They're beautiful still, Chris. They aren't as erect as they were yesterday. But well, I won't comment further. but they were absolutely fabulous. Laura Sermily and Kate Gridley and a number of other people in the congregation just worked their tails off to make this a beautiful wedding. And it was. And as this couple looks forward to the future, we can put a little punctuation point on that because Richard Hopkins and Gail Munchow are celebrating their 51st anniversary today. So Gail is pretty private normally, and Richard had to get permission to share this. So Gail, thank you for letting us, because it is really a wonderful event and we're all really happy for you and happy that you're here with us to celebrate it. So there's always unspoken joys and concerns, maybe more so this week than normal. Did I miss one that someone submitted to me? All right. Pardon? Pardon? Oh, yes, the new people, the new staff. That's the wedding. Did you already, I know I'm out of order on the slide deck because this was first. This is Emma McKee, who's been hired to work in the nursery. She's a they are a fourth-year Middlebury student. And their coworker is someone probably familiar to you, Sydney Singh, who grew up in our congregation in many ways. And Sydney and Emma are going to be the two nursery care folks this year, with high school students filling in when one of them has to be away. And there you see our wonderful departing bookkeeper, Chris Butler on the left, and Kara Mosier, our new bookkeeper, going through her training this week on the right. And we're already becoming very fond of Kara, who's really taking to the work here. And we're very, very happy that this long and difficult search in a very, very tight market for bookkeeping has come to a happy end for us. So thank you, Richard. Now we've covered everything, and I'm just going to leave a moment of silence for all those unspoken joys and concerns that you came here with and are important to you individually.
Our special reading today includes a sung response to its spoken verses. The title of the litany in our hymnal, "We Begin Again in Love," is part of what all of us will be singing. The late Reverend Eller Isaacs, a Jewish Unitarian, wrote these words to celebrate the Jewish High Holy Days and UU values. When we get to the litany, Ronnie will explain how we are going to share in it. But first, I invite you to listen closely to this video of Reverend Eller Isaacs explaining how the hymn editors changed some of his spoken words from singular to plural, and why that never sat well with him, because it diminished the relationship between each person and his vision of God.
The people who published the hymnal chose to put the response, the communal response, into the third person. I wrote it in the first person. I wrote it, "I forgive myself, I forgive you. We begin again in love." I see the person who is forgiving as an instrument of the holy, and the person being forgiven as likewise an expression of the holy, more than an individual psychological dynamic where somebody did a bad thing, they admitted they did a bad thing, they made amends, and somebody else makes a judgment that they have made adequate amends. Some people really hesitate to participate in this experience because they think that they don't actually know whether forgiveness has been earned. I also had an experience with Bill Coffin years ago where he said, "Brother Isaacs, what makes you think you can forgive yourself?" I don't think I can forgive myself, but I think I know that I recognize, and I teach others to recognize, that we are an embodiment of the holy, that we're in partnership with God in that process of forgiving. So it's important to me that it be singular rather than plural. So here we invite people to come together as in pairs or in small groups if they wish, or simply to imagine that in themselves which needs to be forgiven, and to call to mind someone with whom they need to reconcile.
Okay, everybody, we're just going to sing through the response twice to make sure everybody knows it. And then in between each sung response is a spoken line of text that I will speak. So you'll sing a phrase, pause, breathe, listen, and then sing another phrase. But right now, just to make sure everybody knows this, here's how it goes. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Good, one more time. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, we begin ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
Now the High Wire Act begins. For those of you who are really interested in the written sermon, I will send it out to everybody via email at some point in the coming week. But I called this service Essential Life Skills because I'm starting something special this year. Scattered throughout the year, I'm going to talk about 5 things that in this environment where COVID is over but isn't over, depending on what the president is saying. I think that all of us, in addition to wherever we are on the COVID spectrum, are part of different organizations that are living with long COVID. The life of our congregation and lots of other people has been affected by how we were reacting to COVID. And I want to reflect over the course of the year about how that might be inhibiting us from exercising the life skills that will not only allow us to survive, but to thrive. It's important that the congregation thrive. It's not really meeting our mission if we just survive until we no longer survive, which is the way of all living things. But we need to thrive. And so I want to focus over the course of the year on some of the things that we need to thrive. And I'm starting with skills for depolarizing. Now that's a socio jargon, and you know what I mean. We're living in a world where the conflicts feel harder and more frequent, and we feel it in our families. There's hardly a family out here where you get enough of the family members together, and there's certain things that you just can't talk about. You feel unsafe bringing them up in your family. It creates too much anger and too much separation. And this is what I mean about polarization. And I'm talking about the skills that move us away from that. Now, there's a bigger framework. I felt this way, not just about what's happening in families, but I get feedback from you about which of the great religious questions you're interested in at any particular time. As CVUUS, we tend not to put up there first what happens in a lot of religions of what is the nature of God and our relationship of God, but there are a lot of people who think about that in one way or another. People have questions about why is there evil? People have questions about what happens in life after death. These are all classic religious questions. And in the list is the nature of humans and how we treat each other and how we know what is true. And my sense of the congregation in the last few years is that has risen to the highest of all of the religious questions. What are we learning from our world about human beings and how we treat each other? And what are we learning about the nature of truth that doesn't fit what we grew up with? And so depolarization plays right into that as well, because those issues get inflamed to levels that represent real sickness in our society when we get more polarized. And clearly, advertising and politics has figured out ways to play on every button that polarizes us. So we need skills to work around that. Now, as I said, it's an essential skill. So I could have talked about it any Sunday. Why am I talking about it this Sunday? In my mind, it has a wonderful connection with the Jewish High Holy Days, which begin at sundown tonight and run for 10 days. Those of you familiar with my ministry know that I have said every year in one way or another that I think the Jewish high holy days are one of the great spiritual inventions of all times. You think about our New Year's Eve. Our New Year's Eve is a big party for those who can stay up late enough, and then it's swallowed by an orgy of sports on TV and maybe some shopping, and for some people resolutions, which the only real question is how soon are they abandoned, and then it's over. The Jewish New Year's starts with 10 days, and it starts with a commandment that you think about what you need to forgive in others and what you need to ask forgiveness for. Now that is really, really hard. Some of you are familiar with the reading in our hymnal where Reinhold Niebuhr, a Christian theologian, says forgiveness is the final and most difficult of all forms of love. And so here's Judaism and saying, you want to start the new year with something that will really make the year new? Start with forgiveness. And then if you work it out with people over the first 9 days, then you're allowed to come to God and try and repair your relationship with God. And of course, none of us are perfect. So there's damage everywhere. There's damage in our relationship with the mystery of God, and there's damage in our relationships with each other. I know there are things in my life that I find so shameful and so embarrassed that I just don't talk about them with anybody. I'm sure most of you in this room have a little bit of that somewhere in your past, if not in your present. And so this forgiveness, as I've said to you, I think last year I said it, it's really, really, really hard work, and it can't actually be finished. So this is directional work. We come together, if we're going to do it, to push ourselves toward forgiveness, not to push ourselves into forgiveness. Because if someone isn't ready to forgive, actually pushing them into an apology they don't really feel is disastrous. It doesn't work, and it creates more havoc. So this connection to the Jewish high holy days works because when I think about depolarization, I think about how hard forgiveness is, and it's sort of locked inside this stony castle of us with fear and embarrassment and all of these things surrounding us that make it hard. And then in modern times, we've built this really dangerous moat around it called polarization that makes it even harder to get to the point where we're working on forgiveness. Now, like any metaphor, don't think too much about it. You'll start to think of ways that the metaphor doesn't work. But I really think that captures the basic feeling that we've taken something that's really, really hard and really, really essential to thriving, dealing with forgiveness, and we've made it much, much harder by creating a world in which polarization is so dominant. So that's why I call depolarization a really essential skill. And some of you know I devoted the last month of my sabbatical to traveling in swing states where I felt polarization might really be more acute than it is even in Vermont, and seeing what people were doing to deal with polarization. Now, you don't have to go there. There's lots of books being written on how we can get along together better and different techniques, but I wanted to go into that environment, and I wanted to specifically be looking for that. And one of the first things I found was that when you really look for it, it's there in just ways that you wouldn't expect, that really amp up for you how important the problem is. So early in my trip, I went to a farmer's market in the really nice suburb of Columbus called Westerville. I did it partly because I knew Michelle would be going to the farmer's market here, and I wanted to take a picture of myself and say, see, I'm thinking of you. And one of the first, it's a beautiful day. It's a nice big farmer's market. The smells are wonderful. They have ethnic food as well as local produce. And one of the first booths that I came to was the Franklin County Health Booth. And I had a nice chat with the young woman who was at the booth. And I said, I see lots of really helpful literature about breast cancer and poverty and feeding kids and things like this. I don't see anything about COVID. I mean, is that like completely settled here? And she said, no, we have information about COVID and where you can get free shots and vaccines and things like that. It's in that basket over there, and I can't put it out. I'm not allowed to put it out by my superiors. And I said, why is that? She said, because when we put it out, inevitably someone comes up and starts yelling at us for propagating lies about COVID that the government is using to gain control of us. And it creates a scene and it drives people away from the booth. And it, creates a lot of questions that my superiors have to answer, and we just can't do it. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's interesting. If polarization makes it impossible for you at a health booth to put out information about where you can get a free vaccination if you want it, that tells you how deep in the mire we are. And then I went further into the fair, and I came across a booth where people who were building a new high-end nursing facility were, and they were talking, they were looking for people to move into this facility. And now, because it's really on my mind, polarization, I said to the woman there, so do you run into issues where families are so split over health and vaccination and whether you're vaccinated or not, that there's fights over visiting grandma, or they just aren't visiting grandma? And she said, well, I'm not aware of that, but I'm sure that it's happening, knowing Ohio. And I said, so as you're planning this new facility, are you creating some procedures to help people get over those polarizations so that everybody can visit grandma? And she said, I've never thought of that. That actually is a good idea. That's a service we should be offering the people moving to our facility. And that made me realize that this is a little bit like anti-racism work. You can't do it really well unless you're willing to keep looking for where the problem is and to think about all of the ramifications. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It can be just recognizing when there's a good idea and sharing it. And so that was the very beginning of my trip. And as the trip went on, I went to, there's a group called Braver Angels. It's now nationwide, which is trying to encourage discussions about polarization, often in ways that I find a little confusing. One of their favorite techniques is to create a debate. And to get a good debate, they create a very polarized description of the issue. There was one, unions, are they bad for people or are they good for people? As if there was a binary answer. And as a former union member, living with a wife who's a former union member, I know that sometimes they're bad for you and sometimes they're good for you. There is no binary answer on unions, but they've set it up, this conversation about how to depolarize people, as a polarized question. And I've had discussions with them about the wisdom of that, but they say the way they actually run the meetings, forcing people just to listen to each other and where they're coming from, aren't really about getting to intellectual solutions to the issues. They're about just getting people used to hearing feelings from the other side fully expressed so that you can then search for something you have in common with those people. Because underlying the disagreements about policy are often common values if you can get people to talk about them. And so I asked them, how well does that work? And they said, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They had a gun control thing where the people who wanted more gun control regulation came in with their feelings, and the gun freedom lobby came in with all of its position points at huge length and just read them over and over until the people who were on the other side had listened and listened, but had stopped taking it in. And so I went to a training session they had for high school students. And one of the most important things about that training session was that depolarization starts not with understanding the other side. It starts with looking at where you are polarized. It starts with looking at where you use not binary language, us, them, on, off, good, bad, instead of recognizing that there is complexity in you, which you have to learn to love. And that because there's complexity in you, there's almost certainly complexity in the other person. And then you can reach out. And they said, if you're having trouble doing it, one of the things you can do is to imagine someone listening to you, talking to your friends. Imagine someone who you know disagrees with you on policy, and imagine what they're hearing when they hear you talk to their friends. Are they hearing a total condescending put down? Are they hearing anger that isn't really interested in getting at the deeper facts? And this is really hard to do. The kids did an exercise, and some of them got it, and some of them just sat back and tried to surreptitiously look at their phones because it was just too hard to do. So I want to wrap this up by just saying that the single most important way in that I see is becoming more at home with complexity, and thinking that complexity is your friend. Complexity may make making a decision harder. It may require more work, but it also gives you a much richer world to live in. It gives you many more possibilities. It tells you if you are facing people, if you are for reproductive rights and you're facing people who are vehemently for some of the more restrictive abortion laws out there, that if you talk long enough to them, you will find a significant number of them are heartsick about how many people oppose taking better care of the babies when they're born. And that this is an area where there is actually a lot of common ground that people can start to depolarize on. Now, it doesn't mean giving up your values, but it does mean living your life so that when you run down that litany of things in Rob Eller Isaac's Litany of Atonement, you find a way that makes it easier to begin again in love on each of those points. So I hope that this sermon lands as hope in the wintertime of our, the rose in the wintertime of our dealing with all of this polarization, that there is a way of doing this. It's not the way that comes from our lower brain, which means it's not the first thing we think of and it's not instinctive, but we have more developed brain, and we can start to realize by the complexity that there is a way forward that is hopeful, that is a rose in the wintertime. So thank you. And I'll send out the sermon and you can see how close I got to what I had written. And I actually had a couple jokes in there, but you know, there's nothing worse than not getting a joke right and saying, no, I meant, so I left that out, but I do want to end on a happier note. So let's sing this wonderful hymn, We Laugh, We Cry, that I know is a favorite of the congregation. if you came with that sense of God in you that Rob Eller Isaacs was talking about, may you go with it. If you came seeking the way, may the way rise to meet you. And whatever way you came and whatever way you're going, may you have the courage to live fully into what life presents you. Blessed be.